Ah, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Professor Darku, or you can call me Submaster Chef. We're gonna pick up where we left off last time. Lesson 3 of the Avid textbook. Here we go. Color management. In any production chain, there are various devices such as cameras, scanners, monitors, TV screens, etc. that capture or display a color image. The goal of color management is to obtain a good match of color across all these devices so that what you see at the shoot is represented accurately at all stages of production. The workflow for color management has changed significantly over the years, and it is very important to produce an image that matches as far as possible what the director intended. You will be dealing with footage that was shot in a digital format, and in this lesson, you'll learn how to manage the look of your images throughout the production process. We will discuss the concepts of color space, such as Rec 709 and Film Log, and you will learn about LUTs, lookup tables, and CDLs, color decision lists. You will then learn about various workflows that make up all of these. So why is color management important? Nowadays, cameras can capture very high quality images and work in a variety of bit ranges and color spaces. One of the primary roles of an editor is to preserve the precision and color range that was captured and maintain this, so that the colors of the original are kept throughout the editing process. If you bring raw data directly from the camera into Media Composer, you may be surprised to see that it looks quite flab and drab, as you can see in figure 3.1. This is because many cameras capture in a log color space, which allows a greater tonal range to be captured. More about this in a moment. Although the full tonal range is contained in the image, you will view it incorrectly because computers work in a different color space. Thus, you will want to apply some kind of conversion to make the image look as far as possible like the director intended. This can be done in various ways, which we will come to in a moment. But in order to understand what's going on, you need to understand a bit about color spaces and how you can switch from one to another. There are various ways to deal with this. You always have to consider what is your delivery format. You may be working as an offline editor, in which case you won't be responsible for the output, but you'll still need to emulate as far as possible what the intended output will look like. On the other hand, if you're going to be delivering the final output, you need to choose a color space to work in that will reflect the delivery format. Typically, you'll start by looking at the raw footage as it comes off the camera and link to it, using an AMA plugin if needed. At some point, you'll import this link material and convert it to some kind of codec so you can work more efficiently. You learned how to do that in the previous lesson. You'll need to keep track of the way your material is viewed so that it always looks like what is intended to be the final output. But another part of the process is applying a look to your footage. You may have material that looks like the original scene as it was shot, but the director might want to look at it quite different. This is where the color grade comes in. The colorist is working to get the mood and the feel of the footage looking the way it should. For example, in the anesthesia project, you can see the final result in figure 3.2. This could be done by you on the Media Composer using the various tools available in the color correction mode. If you're working on a symphony, you'll have even more tools at your fingertips. However, the limitation while working on the Media Composer is that you may have already converted the footage into a codec that may not contain all the original information. In a film workflow, you won't be responsible for the grading. It is going to be done externally using the original raw material from the camera. Thus, the work can be done on any of the industry standard color grading systems such as DaVinci Resolve, Assimilate Scratch, or Filmlight's Baselight, to name but 3. In this case, you'll need to apply the work that has been done on these or other systems to your timeline. This can be done by applying the grading information in a non-destructive way so they can be changed further down the line. As the edit progresses, more and more work is done and the various looks are refined. You'll need to work with the colorist to make sure you are seeing the best images possible. This is why color management is an essential part of the long-form workflow. The edit suite is in the center of the post-production process, so you'll need to understand color theory if you're going to produce the best results. Color space. The human eye can perceive a huge range of light levels at both low intensity and high intensity. But when you try to capture what you see on a camera of some kind, you're converting the image into some sort of digital signal. Even if you're still using film, in which case you are creating an image on a piece of celluloid, you will still be converting to a digital signal at some point. The range of colors that your eye can perceive has to be mapped into some kind of code so we can preserve it in a digital format. And when we organize those colors is known as color space. Film cameras capture a very wide range of intensity, almost matching that of the human eye. When digital cameras first came out, their tonal range was much lower than that of film, but technology has improved dramatically, and now a digital camera is considered by most to be just as good as film. When a camera points at a scene, it is trying to capture an image that matches as far as possible with what your eye perceives. This is done by the camera sensor, which converts the light into a digital signal, a string of zeros and ones that somehow encode to represent the real world image. Of course, this data stream is meaningless unless it's converted into a picture that you view in some way. It could be on your TV screen, your computer monitor, a printed page of the big screen at the local cinema. All of these devices deliver a picture in a different way, and we use the concept of color spaces to manage how the picture looks on every device. You'll also need to convert the digital information when moving between different devices in order to achieve color consistency wherever you view it. You, the editor, will be using a computer screen, which works on a different color space to a standard TV set. Though these days, you are just as likely to be viewing a movie on a computer screen via YouTube as you are to be watching on a TV set. They can give quite a different picture. Thus, you need to understand what a color space is and how it can be converted from one to another. There are various ways of representing color. For example, if you're in the print industry and you convert the image to a printed page by applying different combinations of standard inks, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, CMYK. The range of colors that you can print is dependent on the inks in the CMYK color space is vastly smaller than what the eye can perceive. In the world of video, we work with RGB, red, green, blue. And by combining these, you can create a much larger range of colors. There are different ways of doing this. You've probably heard of RGB and sRGB color spaces, which are quite commonly used, the latter for computer monitors. In HD, Avid can work in RGB, but this requires more storage as the RGB color space needs more digits. More usually, you work with Rec. 709, which is a standard for television. If you plot a graph as shown in figure 3.4, you can represent colors by employing various color spaces, which can capture varying amounts of the full range of color that extends in the real world. Some are better than others, and it all depends on how much information you can store for each frame of the video. If you move into high resolution workflows, 4K and beyond, you will see there's a multitude of color spaces that Avid can work with. For more on this, you will find tons of information on the web, but for now we'll just stick with RGB and Rec. 709. To achieve the high quality of picture required in a cinema, you need to use as many bits as possible to capture as much information as you can. But if you're viewing this image on a computer screen, which is most likely to be working in 8-bit color, 2 to the power of 8, which works out to be 256 possible levels of color, then you may see a reduced set of colors to what actually exists in the signal. Most broadcast cameras worked in 8-bit color until recently, but nowadays you'll come across cameras that capture in 10-bit, which is 1024 levels, or beyond, which means you can capture a much wider range of color levels. Hold on a second. I'll play my music again. There we go. Oh, one more second. Let's continue. To achieve the high quality of picture required in a cinema, you need to use as many bits as possible to capture as much information as you can. But if you are viewing this image on a computer screen, which is mostly... Oh, wait, I already read that. Sorry, moving on. An RGB color space is basically a way of making a range of possible colors by combining varying amounts of red, blue, and green. In the 8-bit world, you have 256 possible levels on each channel. The value of 000 represents black, and 255, 255, 255 represents white. 25500 represents pure red, and so on. You can easily find the RGB values of a color by using the color picker and the color correction tool, or any effect that uses a color swatch, as shown in figure 3.5. In the early days of digital video, it was not possible to capture information in the RGB format due to bandwidth limitations, so a different way of encoding was devised. The luminance and color, or chrominance, part of the signal were split apart. This system has been used in television since the days when it was the only way that color TVs could use a signal. That was also compatible with the old black and white sets. The old analog signal, also used for example in the Sony Betacam tape format, was YUV, Y being the luminance component and U and V being the respective color components. When we migrated to digital recording, this became YCBCR, again, luminance and two color components for blue and red. If you are wondering about the green component, this was combined with the luminance using a clever matrix because our eyes are predominantly sensitive to green light. The form of YCBCR that was used in standard definition was known as ITU R601 or Rec 601, and the standard for HD was known as ITU R709 or Rec 709. Rec 709, an abbreviation of the mouthful ITUR Recommendation 709, which itself is an abbreviation of International Telecommunication Union Radio Communications Sector. Alright. This is the standard color space for broadcast, and is the color space that Media Composer works in by default. As you can see from figure 3.6, the range of colors that can be represented in the Rec 709 color space is much smaller than the full range of colors that exist in the real world, and that is a major limitation of this color space. Whereas RGB can represent levels from 0 to 255, Rec 709 only permits levels from 16 to 235. You need to be aware of this when you view a Rec 709 image on an RGB monitor, as you will see less contrast than if you display the image on a TV which is calibrated for Rec 709. And conversely, if you grade an image so it looks right on an RGB monitor, it will look too contrasty on TV. You can apply LUTs to compensate for this, and we'll come to that in a moment. Nowadays, you can capture more information. It is possible to work in RGB workspace, and in UHD, many others too, but it means more processing power needed and takes up more storage space, so it is still not the standard way of working. However, that's not the end of the story. Your eye perceives light in a way that does not easily translate to either the Rec 709 or the RGB color spaces, which is why we need to introduce the concept of log or logarithmic color spaces. Log versus linear. Imagine for the moment that you are working in a grayscale 8-bit world with 256 levels of gray going from black to white. In this case, 128 would be half the level of 256. In terms of film exposure, this represents one f-stop. If we carry on through this progression, the values of 256, 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, 1 represent 8-stop. If we carry... 8 represents successful f-stops. Sorry. Thus, the dark end of the scale is represented by very coarse increments, and the top end has very fine increments. This means that there is very little detail captured in the dark parts of the picture. It is also opposite to the perceptual sensitivity of the human eye, which is very sensitive to variations in the lower end of light intensity. A log space uses an equal spacing of values to represent an f-stop. 256, 224, 192, 160, 128, 96, 64, 32. This means you get much better response at the dark end, and you are not wasting bits of light at the end. An 8-bit log image is approximately equivalent to a 12-bit linear image. The log space is also equivalent to how the human eye perceives light and how film captures an image. Found another typo. It says the human eye instead of the human eye. Thus, most cameras in the film industry are capturing in the log space. The above example is for 8-bit, and most cameras capture in 10 or more bits, but the same reasoning applies. The great thing about capturing images in the log space is you are able to capture a great deal more detail in the lower end of the light spectrum. However, there is a caveat. Your monitor is working in the linear world of RGB, so the images will appear very flat if they are not converted, as you can see in figure 3.7. You will see how to do this in a moment, but now you are aware of what to look out for in an image. Log are variants such as log C, which stands for log Cineon because it's based on the Kodak Cineon curve, is an option on many cameras, so you will likely come across this in the edit suite. Even if you are not responsible for the final grade, you still need to apply a transformation to a log before it will look right on your screen. You can do this by applying a LUT, which we'll do in a moment. The bottom line is that whenever encoding in color space, the bottom line is that whatever encoding in color space you've used for the image, you are viewing it on a monitor that may itself be limited in its ability to display it properly. Regardless of that, if you start with the best quality possible, the image will look much better than when it is remapped to an 8-bit screen. Thus, it is far better to start with a 12-bit image and work throughout in a 12-bit and only convert to 8-bit at the last possible moment, i.e. at the delivery stage. Oh yeah, we got a viewer. Sup, welcome to the Avid stream. And there's another one. Ideally, any transformations... I am on page 71 in the textbook, which is 86 in my PDF. I'll give you a second to find that, I guess. We're just gonna chill here, listen to this royalty-free band that I have. Copyright this, YouTube. How you guys doing? You having a good day? I'm having a good day. I mean, I was until I started reading this Avid textbook, but you know, it's my cross to bear. But we're all in this together. Boy. I got a long ways to go. Well, I'm starting to get a little impatient. So you've got like 5 seconds to get caught up, and then I'm just gonna keep going. Okay, great. Awesome. Let's continue. Ideally, any transformations that you apply should not be permanent or baked in because that would limit your ability to work with the image later. Let me read that again for the DPs. Ideally, any transformations you apply should not be permanent or baked in because that would limit your ability to work with the image later. Fortunately, Media Composer is a powerful set of tools to help you get the best possible look for your footage, and the rest of this lesson will guide you through the minefield of working with different color spaces. Color workflow. There are 2 basic workflows for color management. Let the colorist do the work and send you shots that have the correction baked in other words, applied to the actual media rather than have the correction given to you as metadata. You will be working with the shots as they are supposed to be seen, but this method makes it difficult to make changes later. If the colorist needs to update their changes, they'll have to re-import some new clips and then replace them in the timeline. Using either a LUT or a CDL, which are descriptions of the changes made to image instead of converting the media itself. Media Composer supports both, or supposed to use both, and they can be added and removed as you like. Any updates are easily applied at any stage of the edit, leaving the media untouched. This is always a good thing because it means you are working with the original at all times. You might start out by linking to the originals, but if they are high resolution, you will get better performance from your system if you import and convert to a more efficient codec. You can apply transformations at any stage and keep these on the imported material. In the second case, you apply the LUT or CDL to the source material for importing, or at any time during the edit. This is done in one of the tabs in the source settings. Using the source settings. In this section, we're going to look at 3 different examples of footage. Some red footage at the original 5K resolution, some imported images from the Project Incubate, which is also shot in red, and some images from Anesthesia, which is the project you've been working on in lessons 1 and 2. Don't forget the drinking game at home. Oh yeah, that's right, my other stream got taken down, so I have to re-explain the rules. Alright, so before we move on, I'm going to explain the rules of the drinking game. So, every time I stumble over a word, take a sip. Every time the textbook decides to mention a figure, take a sip. Every time the textbook says shot, take a shot. And every time there's a typo, take a shot too. Yeah, that's a new rule. Other than that, I think that's it. We just make up the rules as we go along. Anyways, red footage. Color management is done using the source settings. Let's have a look at them now. In the Project Anesthesia, open the bin lesson 3 color management red. It's empty for now. Navigate to the folder 210 extras, link media, unleash 3 red and alt Windows Option Mac. Drag this folder into the bin and your link clip should appear. Let's get the aspect correct first. You did this in the MC201 course. Set your bin view to include the reformat column and set all the clips to pillarbox/letterbox. Switch to frame view as shown in figure 3.8. Access the source settings by selecting the A002 CO13 clip in the bin and right-clicking. You will see 4 tabs at the top of the source settings window. For now, select the linked plugin tab as shown in figure 3.9. This tab will change according to the kind of footage you're using. If Media Composer detects red footage, then you'll get specific amounts of... Shit, I lost where I was at. You get specific controls for the red clip based on the metadata from the camera used. You can choose to use the camera metadata settings, or you can make your own adjustments, in which case you'll have custom settings for the image. Alternatively, you can import color settings in the RLX, RSX, or RMD format if they were created outside of Media Composer. Other camera formats may produce similar settings. The details will vary, but the principle is the same. Take a sip every time I say sorry. I keep saying that a lot. Starting now. For red footage, there are a lot of controls that you can tweak, and you will see the results in the image on the right and the histogram underneath. If you like, you can play with some of these settings and to create a better picture to work with. Remember, any changes you make here do not affect the media, just the way you view it. It's a matter of perspective, really. You are applying changes that will affect the way the clip appears when used in the timeline. Interpreting a histogram. Histograms are a useful way of displaying information about a clip. You're looking at a plot of the count of pixels at a particular value. The left-hand side represents the low dark values, and the right-hand side represents the high light values for each of the red, green, and blue channels. There are 2 small tick marks at the end of the graphs which show you the Rec 709 limit, 16 to 235 on an 8-bit scale. In the example shown in figure 3.9, the pixels are reasonably well distributed because the image is fairly well lit. However, it could be a little bit brighter. Oh, my music stopped. There we go. Unfortunately, my royalty-free band, who's Not Nearly, by the way. The name is Not Nearly. Anyways, Not Nearly's only got 3 songs on Spotify, so... I mean, I really hope you like these 3 songs. That's all I'm saying. Anyways. Normally, the information comes from the metadata included in the clip's metadata that was generated in the camera. Hence, the metadata settings will be set to the camera metadata settings. If you make any changes, you will see this change to custom settings. Let's look at some of the controls in more detail. Color space. This is where you set the color space you're working in. The default is red color 2, which gives good skin tones. You can try red color 3, which gives slightly more contrast. Gamma curve. This lets you override the existing curve. Again, you can use the experiment with a red gamma 3 or 4. White balance. If needed, you can use the eyedropper to click on a known area of white in your image. You can use the small slider underneath the image to choose a good frame. Doing this will automatically adjust the Kelvin and tint options. You won't see the faders change, though you will see the histograms update. You should do this before changing any of the other settings. Kelvin and tint. These adjust the color tint of the image. Kelvin adjusts red, blue, and tint adjusts yellow, green. This is the ISO. This is the equivalent of adjusting the film speed in a camera. It results in a higher exposure. It will result in a higher exposure level as you increase it. Flut, similar to gamma, in that adjusts it adjusts the mid-grays without pushing highlights over the edge. Shadow adjusts the black levels. DRX lets you recover dynamic range by extending the highlights. Debayer detail, chroma denoise, and OLPF, a way of preserving detail from the high-resolution image, best left at default. Exposure, brightness, contrast. Feel free to adjust these to get a better picture. For a detailed description of all these controls, refer to the Media Composer Help Guide, adjusting red source settings. When you are happy with the results, click Apply, and if your image is loaded into the source monitor, you'll see it update. Alternatively, you could import a correction from the cameraman. For red footage, you can examine the material in Red Cine X and apply corrections there. Then your look can be exported as an RMD file. You can try this with the third clip, A009C003. To import an external correction, open the source settings and select the linked plugin tab. This time you can see the clip is quite dark and the histogram shows that most of the pixels are barely making it halfway up the scale, despite the fact that they're both wearing white coats. Click the load button to navigate to the 210 extras less than CDLs folder, where you will find a file called Director Grade RMD. Click OK and you'll see the picture moving significantly. Wait, no. Click OK and you'll see the picture improve significantly as shown in figure 3.10. So as you can see, you have two choices. You can either make your own corrections, or you can let someone, perhaps a specialist, do the job for you and use their corrections. I like the latter, personally. Once your changes are made, these settings are applied to the clip wherever you use it. You can do it before you start out, or at any stage before you transcode this clip. If you apply changes to the after clip, you've edited it into the timeline, and you'll need to refresh your sequence. We're going to do that in a moment. Should you wish to set the image back to the original example before you change it, settings, use the camera metadata settings as shown in figure 3.11. Unlike any adjustments you can make the next tab, the color coding tab, these settings are baked into the clip when you transcode it, regardless of your transcode settings. Thus, you'll not be able to update the correction without going back to the original red footage and re-importing. As you are making your adjustments in the linked plugin tab, you won't need to go to the color encoding tab just yet. We'll cover that in the next lot of footage. Linked QuickTimes. Now we'll look at some footage from Incubate. This is originally captured in a high resolution, but there's not enough space to provide that for you to play with. The footage will be converted to a series of QuickTimes. As you can see, the color levels are rather flat, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just kind of tired, but I'm going to push through it. I owe you guys. Anyways, this is originally captured in a high resolution, but there's not enough space to provide that for you to play with. The footage has been converted to a series of QuickTimes. As you can see, the color levels are rather flat, which suggest the originals are using some kind of log color space. In the real world, you or the colorist will work on the originals, but you can also work with these converted images and get some interesting results. To do this, we'll need to explore the next tab, the color encoding tab, to learn about LUTs. Open Lesson 3 Open the Lesson 3 Color Management 2 Incubate Bin and switch to frame view as shown in Figure 3.12. If you look at some of the clips, you notice that there is room for improvement. Note that there is a sequence which has already been cut from the footage before any transformation has been applied. In this case, we'll adjust all the clips at the same time, which in the old days used to be called a one-light transfer. This is when you perform a rough grade to everything at the same time. Try it for yourself. Select all the clips, not the sequence, and open the source settings. Select the color encoding tab as shown in Figure 3.13. Because you have selected multiple clips, you can make changes and apply them to all the clips in one go. Pressing the skip button, which is highlighted in Figure 3.13 above, will remove the clips from your selection. The settings of this tab are the same for all clips regardless of whether they are linked or reported, read or RE or anything else. Again, there is quite a lot here, so it's worth going into some detail to explain what is going on. Source color space. This is the menu at the top of the window. Here you can select the color space of the source material, if you know it, and this information will remain with the clip downstream. If you don't know, then you can select unknown from the list. Making a choice here will not change the image or histogram unless you click auto, in which case Media Composer will do the necessary color mapping to convert the specified color space to that of your project. You will see the transformation in the gray box below. If you're already working Rec 709 and you have selected Rec 709 from the list, then nothing will happen as no transformation is necessary. Color transformations. This is a window which will list many This is a window which will list any transformations, LUTs, or CDLs that you apply. You can have as many transformations as you wish, and you can change the order by dragging them up or down the list. Add or delete. These buttons will add a chosen transformation to the window above or remove a selected transformation. Revert. It's to revert to the last settings you had when the revert button was last pressed. Color management settings. This button will open the color management settings. More about them in a moment. Apply to all, and skip. You can apply your transformations to individual clips or all at the same time. Skip will remove the current clip from the selection. Now let's see how it all works. You are working Rec 709, so choose that from the source color space. Now click on the menu at the bottom of the color transformation window. You will see a large choice of items here. For now, scroll down the list and find Sony .slog to S gamut to LC709. At first, nothing will happen. You'll now need to click the Add button to add this transformation to the list in Color Transformations window. Now you'll see a big change to it in the image known as Figure 3.14. You can quickly bypass the transformation by pressing Bypass All Color Transformations button. Note that the histogram was not shifted with the colors out of the Rec 709 region between the tick marks. It has just increased in the contrast and saturation of the image. Also note that there is a thick black line at the bottom end of the histogram that represents the black mass in the picture. Press Apply to All, and you'll apply the same information to all of the clips, and you will see this in the bin as shown in Figure 3.15. If the image is loaded in the source monitor, you'll see the transformation applied there too. You can try a different transformation. First, remove the center transformation by selecting and pressing Delete. It will no longer be on the list in the Color Transformations window. This time, choose Aria Alexa Log C to Rec 709. This is slightly different treatment. Press Add and Apply to All, and your images will be well upon update. Wait, I think I read that wrong. Press Add and Apply to All, and your images in the bin will update. You will see that you can add more than one transformation. Sometimes the results can be a bit bizarre, but it's worth trying to see what you can do. You can also experiment with changing the order of the transformations by dragging one up above the other. For example, suppose you had the Canon C log, full range video range. This will bring you back to where you need to be, but if you move this transformation to the Canon C log, you will apply the correction before you have blown it out again. So you'll still be above bounds. There are far too many transformations to go through here in any detail, but you can refer to the Media Composer help, select the color properties of required media, for an explanation of what they do. Avid provides you with a fair number of choices, so you can also import your own. See the next section. But to make sense of all the different color transformations, they're grouped in different sections. The first two simply let you scale from full range 0 to 55 to video 16 to 235, or the reverse. Then there are two groups of various transformations that mostly convert from linear to some other color space. As footage is log based, these won't apply here. Finally, there's a group of settings that are used by specific cameras and are mostly logged linear. Thus, if you know the camera, you'll be able to choose the appropriate setting from the group. And this is perhaps the most important point here. Increasingly, it's necessary for the editor to have a conversation with the camera operator or a DP to find out exactly what they are using. Transformations know what color space the camera is working in. In this case, the clips are already been imported, and there is no way of knowing what transformation was applied when they were originally created. If you were working with the original, in this case red material, you would know exactly the transformation. No, you would know exactly what transformation to apply. It's worth mentioning that you can see what is going on in your bin. You are back in the normal text view. If you choose columns, you can add some extra columns. In figure 3.16, you can see a color management view, which includes some columns you may have used before. ASC SOP and ASC SAT, which we'll use when we talk about CDLs. Color space and color transformation, you can see that the same color space you select in the source settings is reflected here. Also, the color transformation you've just applied. Oh, I am hitting left, not down. Oops. Applying your transformations to a sequence. You may remember that your bin contained a sequence that had already been edited with these clips, but if you load this into the timeline, you'll see that all the clips in the timeline have returned their original look. But if you will want to apply the transformations you've made, so there is a useful little button you'll need called the Refresh Sequence All button. You first met this when we talked about adapters in the MC201 course, and you'll find it in the bottom right corner of the More tab of the command palette. It has been placed on the timeline figure 317, and if you press it, you will refresh the sequence with any settings you've just applied. When I say figure 317, I kind of feel like I'm referring to a verse of the Avid Bible. Figures 317. The Lord said unto his people, the submaster chef has said unto his people, the sequence before and after pressing refresh, the sequence before and after pressing refresh sequence all button. Now you will see your color corrections applied to the timeline. You'll also see the color adapter icons with the green dot because, of course, it is real time to show that you have done a transformation. If you trim a sequence with an adapter applied, you'll find that the transformation will be temporarily removed while you are in trim mode. If you open the trim settings to turn on render mode on the fly, if you open the trim settings and turn on render on the fly, you'll find the images retain their transformations while you are in trim mode. An obscure but useful setting to know about. Alternatively, you can select the sequence in the bin, right-click and choose refresh sequence as shown in figure 318. The sub-menu allows you to apply particular transformations such as reforming or time warps, and in our case, color adapters. You can choose all if you would want to apply any transformation you've done. Finally, you have the additional option, highlighted in figure 318, to remove color adapters should you wish to revert your sequence back to the original unedited clips. You have two choices for importing the footage. Apply the settings to the media you created, baked in, or preserve any settings as metadata. You make the choice in the transcode options set in figure 3.19. You can apply the source transformations by selecting the options, one for color encoding and one for frame flex. Hold on. There we go. Jams are back. Let's stretch for a minute. Okay. Generally, you won't tick the boxes baking in the transformations will mean... Wait, have I read this? I'll read it again anyways. Generally, you won't tick the boxes baking in the transformations which... Sorry, wait, what? Generally, you won't tick the boxes as baking in the transformations will mean that you can't change them later, as it will change the actual media. If you leave them unticked as shown, you'll be able to remove and update your transformation even after it's questioned. So far, we've looked at the transformations that Avid provides you with the source settings window. But what about the situation where you want to use a correction that someone else has made for you in another program such as Resolve or Baselite? Using LUTs and CDLs. The final selection of the shots is from Anesthesia. In this case, we're going to look at what happens when someone else has provided you with a grade. These are various ways of preserving metadata used to describe a color, correction, or grade. Fall under two categories: LUT, lookup table, or CDL, color decision list. Most color grading systems provide one or the other of these, usually both. And in the final part of this lesson, you'll learn about how to import these into your project and apply them. LUT. A LUT, or a lookup table, is a way of applying a transformation to your original image based on mathematical formula. There are many different types of LUTs, and they can be used to calibrate monitors, to apply transformation, to compensate for different types of viewing apparatus, and also to apply a color grade. You generally use them to apply a grade that is in process, but they would not normally be considered as the final stage of the process. Ultimately, the final goal must be done with the proper tools of the proper viewing environment. In this case, the LUT is used as a method of applying a correction, but is not intended to be used for output as the color grader, which will be using a different monitor to view the image when he or she makes the grade. Oh boy. Is rather akin to the concept of the previously mentioned one light transfer, which is a term used in the old film industry when you took the negative, performed a quick grade on the entire reel rather than a shot-by-shot basis, so the editor could get a feel for the end result. You will usually come across 1D and 3D LUTs. 1D LUTs are very good for setting contrast, white point, and basic color adjustments. A 3D LUT takes things a lot further because they replace the color and luma values in a 3D space, which is more representative of how color works in the real world. You can visualize a 3D LUT rather like a cube shown in figure 320. You will usually use 3D LUTs to transform your image. Now let's try to do this. Open a bin called Lesson 3, Color Management 3 Anesthesia, and switch to frame view as shown in figure 3.21. As you remember, as mentioned earlier, the director wants to apply a grade that gives a period feel to the footage rather than a gloomy look. The colorist is giving you a sample LUT from a .cube file, which is a first stab at the grade. First, you need to import the LUT. You can do this in the source settings, so let's go through them now. Select all the clips, right and click and choose source setting. Or you can where was I? Alright, click on the color management settings button to open the settings, which is shown in figure 3.22. There we go. Back on track. Now, click on the second LUT file for importing. Navigate to the folder called 210 Extras, Lesson 3, LUTs and CDLs. There you'll find a LUT called Anesthesia, Grade Cube. Select this and click OK. You will get a message saying the LUT has been successfully imported. It will now appear in the window on the left. You can import a LUT to your project or a shared location. You can drag them across if you intend, or use them for other projects. Close the settings and you will return to the source settings window. You can also access the color management settings from the settings tab in your project window. Just as you did in the last section, click on the menu underneath the color transformations window and select the anesthesia grade LUT from the list. Oh man, as if I couldn't die any faster. Avid's killing me. Ugh. Click add and it will play on the clip as shown in figure 3.23. Oh, dang it, I'm pressing left again. Thanks. Your support means the world to me. We can do this. It is okay, but the blacks are a bit low. The correction was intended for the RGB color space. Apply an additional transformation. Levels scaling, full range to video levels, as shown in figure 3.24. Click apply to all and OK to apply your grade to all the clips and close the window. You have now applied the LUT and you can see how it looks by loading the clips into the source monitor. You can get additional confirmation that you've done this by looking at the clips in text view with your bin column color transformation showing as you can see in figure 3.25. I like when it starts mentioning the figures in the 20s because that means we're almost done with the lesson. Viewing LUT. So far you have applied a LUT to the footage you were working on, but earlier I mentioned that the kind of monitor you were working on also makes a big difference. LUT can be used to apply a transformation to your monitor so you can view your footage correctly. This is particularly important if you're trying to grade your material on your own using the system, the Media Composer color correction mode. You are likely to be viewing your work on a computer monitor, which is normally set up and hopefully correctly calibrated to work in the sRGB color space. But if you were to grade on this monitor without using an external reference monitor, you might get the wrong results. They would look fine to you, but if you export your timeline and now view it on a TV monitor, it will look wrong. The blacks will be too dark and the whites will be too bright. Since Media Composer V83, you can apply a LUT to your monitor. This is known as a viewing LUT. This will switch the way your Composer monitor maps the color information in the image. Depending on what device you are viewing on, you can apply a conversion to mimic color space of your project. This is done by right-clicking on the monitor and choosing one of the options from display color space as shown in figure 3.26. By default, the system will automatically switch the project color space as determined in the Format tab of your project. Thus, if you are working on Rec 709, your Composer monitor will be set to Rec 709. If your screen is sRGB, you will be seeing it properly. Before this setting was available, you could always be viewing your material incorrectly, unless you looked at a correctly calibrated external monitor. Note that you can set the source and record monitor differently. Note also that if you are working in the color correction mode, where this setting would be needed most, you can't change the display. However, what you set the record monitor normal edit mode is what is reflected in all three monitors in color correction mode. The LUT effect. There's a further approach to working with LUTs, and that is to use the LUT effect. It may have passed your notice, but tucked away in the image category of your effect palette is an effect called Color LUT. This rather useful effect lets you apply a LUT to the clip in the timeline, just like any other effect. You can only apply one LUT at a time with this effect, but you could always stack them on top of each other. You can also use this effect to do something you can't do in source settings, and that is to blend a LUT. To use the color LUT effect and blend it back to the original, apply the color LUT effect from the image category of the effect palette to your clip in the timeline and enter the effect mode. Select a LUT as shown in figure 3.27. The LUT is applied to your clip. Duplicate the clip on track V2 or Option. Drag it upwards and remove the effect from the bottommost clip. Now, Alt or Option drag a superimposed effect that applies on top of a V2 as shown in figure 328. Adjust the slider and the superimpose parameter to get the appropriate blend of the LUT and the original. There we go. Should you wish to delete your LUT from your project, you can find them in the LUTs folder, which is housed in your project as shown in figure 329. Move them to trash, and next time... Oh yeah, I forgot. One of the rules of the drinking game was to take a shot every time the Wi-Fi craps out. Luckily, this hasn't happened. I'm actually on data right now, but... You know. Anyways. Move them to trash, and next time you open your project, they will be on the color management settings window. CDLs! The final method of applying a grade is done by using a CDL or color decision list. This is more often when you have a specific grade that has been applied to a number of clips, each one slightly different. As you've seen, there are many steps in the post-production workflow, and it has traditionally been difficult to maintain consistency of picture color values. An attempt has been made to address this problem by the American Society of Cinematographers, who developed a standard format for describing a color look that can be assigned to images throughout the post-production process. This format is known as the ASC Color Decision List, ASC CDL, and it enables the images to maintain a consistent look as they move around different systems. Rather than everyone applying their own correction in various systems, you can work with just one correction that can be applied everywhere when it comes to the final grade. A director or cinematographer is already familiar with the look that is being applied. The ASC CDL specifies the parameters of a color grade by using 9 color values known as slope, offset, and power parameters for each of the red and green and blue check marks, or channels. There's also an updated CDL specification which includes a further parameter, the saturation parameter. These parameters are applied on a per clip basis, which means the editor can save a great deal of time because the information can be imported using an ALE and applied automatically using the source settings. The parameters are just numbers that can be displayed into 2 bin columns, ASC underscore SOP and ASC CAT, and are in fact just a series of numbers. To understand how they work, think of the graphs that you see in the curves section of the color correction mode as shown in figure 330. Each color has a curve and they can be just the way they like that. Oh, and they can be adjusted in 3 basic ways. Slope. If you change the slope or angle of the curve, you will change the contrast of the image. Offset. If you change the offset, you are lifting the curve up and down. This will give you different brightness and will affect the blacks as well as the whites in the image. You know who else is black and being affected in this image? Moving on. Power. This is the equivalent of the gamma of the curve and will affect the midtones without affecting the upper and lower levels of the signal. CDL specification uses 3 numbers. Uses 3 numbers to describe each of the parameters. The slope that has not been changed will have a value of 1.0. If you increase or decrease that number, you are increasing or decreasing the angle of the... Did I just say angle as angel? Down your entire drink for that one. Why am I still streaming? Alright, anyways. But angle of the slope or the contrast of the picture. Likewise, an offset of 0 will leave the curve unchanged, but increasing or decreasing will lift or lower the curve or the brightness. A power value of 1.0 is applying no gamma, but increasing or decreasing will produce different gammas in each of the 3 channels. Thus, a typical CDL might look like figure 3.31 when imported into a bin. Okay, we're in the 30s. This better be like the last page. Please. Please, I need it! You can easily make a bin view to display the ASC underscore SOP and ASC underscore CSA. Wait. Sorry. You can easily make a bin view to display the ASC underscore SOP and the ASC SAT columns. The ASC SOP column displays 3 sets of numbers which are grouped together in parentheses, and the ASC SAT column shows one number representing the saturation value. This information is just metadata that's provided by the color grading system. It can be included with the clip's metadata so it shows up when imported, or it can be provided as an ALE, which you have learned about in the previous lesson. The values in the bin can be edited if needed, but is not recommended unless you're correcting an error. This metadata can also be exported as part of an EDL if you need to pass on your work to another system. Turn on the gems. Applying CDL metadata to a clip. If you have the CDL information in the bin, you can use this to apply a correction to a clip, providing it has not been baked in already. This is done in the source settings. However, before you do this, you'll need to check the color management settings as shown in figure 3.32. At the top of the settings window, you'll see a tick box. There's no period. There's no period. It's just, you'll see a tick box and then a capital letter. You'll see it. You'll see a tick box. Use CDL values from ASC SOP and ASC SAT bin columns when available. This must be ticked on if you want to apply the bin values. This must be ticked on, but I'm ticked off. That was too bad. I'm sorry. Oh boy. Now let's do it with our footage. Your clips have already got the first grade applied as a LUT, so we need to remove that. But first, we will import the CDL data. Select all the clips in the bin, but not the sequence. Locate the folder called 210 extras, lesson 3, LUTs and CDLs. In there, you'll find an ALE called anastasia.ale. Drag this into the bin. The CDL data will be added to the bin, and the CDL data will be added to the bin, and in the ASC SOP column, you'll see the different CDL parameters, which shown in figure 3.33. Right-click the clips, choose Source Settings, delete both transformations from the color transformation windows, and then click Apply to All. Next, press the Auto button, and the CDL info will be applied to the clips as shown in figure 3.34. Finally, press Apply to All and OK to close the window. You have now applied individual corrections to the different clips, just like any other transformation. These can be added or removed as you wish. If the sequence is loaded in the timeline, you can press the Refresh Sequence button to apply the transformations to the clips in the sequence. We did it, guys! We reached the end of lesson 3. Clap it up! Yeah! Woo! Alright. Okay. Here's the deal, ladies and gents. Your boy is both tired and hungry. I'm doing the best I can. So, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna nap for a bit. Then I'm gonna eat some dinner. And then right after I eat dinner, I'm gonna come back and we're gonna slam the rest of this out, alright? I'll see you guys in a bit. I'm going to bed.